Mason Mount is an important moment for midfielders on the market. Yesterday, we broke here on the channel the exclusive story, Manchester City getting closer to signing an important player like Matteo Kovacic, who is set to leave Chelsea this summer. But from what I understand, guys, the situation looks very serious also around Mason Mount. We know he's a player who remains important for Chelsea. They are trying to extend the contract. Mauricio Pochettino is on it, but it's really complicated. It's really unlikely at this stage. And so what's happening is that behind the scenes, there is a feeling that the agreement between Mason Mount and Manchester United over personal terms would not be a problem. At the moment, it's not something completed or 100% done.
I've heard this story come out a lot in the last 12 to 24 hours that there are personal terms are not completed for Mason Mount and Man United. That's led to some United fans celebrating in gusto. Yes, there's a chance that he may not arrive. Maybe we don't sign him. Some Chelsea fans believing there is still a lot of hope with him staying. The Chelsea fans that want him to remain. Equally, there's Chelsea fans frustrated. Oh, does that mean he's going to stay? I really want him to move on. But listen to what Fabrizio said there. There'll be no problem. A big Chelsea account yesterday put out a story saying 100% incorrect that he's agreed personal terms. I messaged them and said, do you think he'll agree personal terms? And they said, yes, it will be no problem. They're just not signed off yet. Remember, officially, they're not going to be signed off until a bid is accepted from Chelsea. But personal terms will be no problem. Personal terms will be fine. Personal terms are agreed. Personal terms are complete. You all know my opinion on this. Same toffee, different wrapper.
But Manchester United feel that will not be a problem to reach an agreement with Mason Mount on the contract. They feel that the player is keen to join Manchester United and to join Erik ten Hag project. So Manchester United are really optimistic on the agreement with the player. But the main problem, the main issue is what's going on between Manchester United and Chelsea, but more in general between Mason Mount and Chelsea in terms of value of the player. Mason Mount is out of contract next summer, but Chelsea have no intention at this stage. Then we know that things change in the market. It's still the very beginning of the transfer window, but at this stage, Chelsea are still asking for at least 80 million for Mason Mount, while the intent...
That's massive. 80 million pounds for Mason Mount. I don't even think the biggest Mount supporter in the world will believe he's worth 80 million pounds with a year left on his contract. I don't believe it. Even Minerals, even Johnny Minerals cannot believe in any way, shape or form he's worth 80 million.
Intention of Manchester United, for example, at the moment is to spend something close to 45, 50 millions because the player is out of contract next summer.
That's still a little bit too much, in my opinion, but much closer to a fairer amount of money for his talent and a contract.
But for Chelsea, he's worth way more than this. So there is a big gap between the two clubs. The negotiation is not easy. People close to the negotiation feel that Chelsea are asking really big money and they were expecting something different. So let's see how this conversation will continue. But at the moment, it's not something easy between the two clubs.
And it was never going to be easy. You know, Chelsea are going to try and raise as much money as possible. Man United, they have a limited budget. Depends on your perspective of looking at football, but they've got a limited budget at the moment due to FFP, and there being very little liquid cash left at Manchester United after years of it being hemorrhaged by the Glazers. So, of course, it isn't going to be easy. I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park. You were going to get, and what you're going to see is a variety of stories coming out. Some will say things are not advanced, clubs are far off, personal terms not agreed. They'll caveat it with, but there'll be no problem. The way it reads to me is very simple. Mason Mount, and I don't really, different media outlets, different journalists will have a different stance on this depending on who's feeding them their information, whether it's coming from Mount, Man United, or Chelsea. It was Man United's briefing that said that personal terms were agreed. It's Chelsea's briefing that is stating that this is 100% incorrect. But what you'll find is that it's actually nearer the middle. The player has agreed to the personal terms, but of course they're not signed off on because a bid has not been agreed as of now. But it's same toffee, different wrapper time. You're going to see ebbs and flows and close and advanced and still far apart on valuation because all three parties in this circumstance are going to tell journalists different things to try and force their arm and to win the negotiation. Man United ideally would love to pick up Mount for 40 million. Chelsea ideally want to sell him for 80, 85. Mason Mount just wants the best contract possible and the best place for the future of his career. So they're all going to be using the media to push things out. We'll do our best to report on as many of these stories as we can. The reason that we do that is so that you can hear a variety of stories rather than just one side of the agenda. What I will say about this deal, though, there is before we do that, actually, please go and follow our TikTok account, link in our description, or scan that QR code on the screen right now. What I will also say is that there is a story today that's come out that Harry Maguire could be used as a make weight in this deal. I am going to say now, I would swap deals are as rare as rocking horse. Secondly, I don't think they want Maguire. So that's those stories I'm just batting aside. I don't really think there's anything in them, much to them at all. I think that's a load of old pony personally. But as I said, that's my personal opinion on this. I'd love to know yours and what you think and what you feel. Make sure like buttons are hit, by the way, people. Very, very important to TFT. You do that. Let's have a little another listen here to what Fabrizio's got to say.
To you, Arsenal still feel confident on this deal. Arsenal are having conversation on this deal because
Declan Rice, we're talking now.
They want Declan Rice is the priority target for the club. There is one important thing to say, that Arsenal, after the Conference League final, as I already told you a few weeks ago, and the plan is confirmed, they will submit a proposal to West Ham. This is the feeling. Arsenal want to attack the situation after the Conference League final. Why after the final? To respect West Ham.
This is very much, look, I say this with respect to Fabrizio, one of the best in the business. We all kind of knew that without needing to be told. I think I did a video a week, 10 days ago stating they're going to wait until that point. They're going to respect West Ham. There are other media outlets that have already detailed this. That is most certainly going to happen. They're never going to put the bid in before because you want to maintain an air of solid relations. You don't want anything untoward, unsettling West Ham before this. Listen, it's probably the biggest day. Probably, you could argue, getting back into the Premier League is massive financially, but West Ham fans care about winning trophies. It's the biggest day in their club's history for at least 40 years, in my view. Maybe since the FA Cup final in 2006. So, yeah, and that was nearly 20 years ago. So, it's absolutely massive. Arsenal will always going to respect it.
Know that nothing will happen before the Conference League final, so it makes no sense to negotiate now. West Ham are 100% focused on the final, but right after the break game against Fiorentina, there will be a bid from Arsenal.
Which is what we all expected, and it's going to come in. This is also, at the same time this is all going on, Man United have held 2 meetings with Sean Rice. That is the father of Declan Rice. He's also his agent. That's why that is significant. Because Man United are trying to worm in, hijack, and take this deal away from Arsenal. Now, Man United, although they're looking at Mason Mount, they are looking at least 2 midfield players this summer. Whether they pull it off or not is another question, because what Ten Hag has been very, very specific with when he's talking to Myrtle and the negotiators and the transfer team is I want to fill these holes, but it has to be with the right character and the right people. Yes, you can bring in Sabitzers and Veghorses on loans if you've got holes and problems, because that's not a permanent deal that is going to potentially hamstring the club in months and years to come. We've seen that many times with bad dealings at the club post Fergie and David Gill. But I still think when you look at the reports and you look at the media, they are still convincing us, they are still telling us that Arsenal are leading this race. Bayern Munich, yes, they've made approaches. Yes, they spoke to the players' camp. So this is what I was told yesterday by someone very close to the situation. The journalist, I can't reveal who he is because he's writing a big article on it. So I don't kind of want to steal his thunder on this. But essentially has said there has been communication, but it's with the agent, not directly with Declan Rice. So Tuchel didn't phone Declan Rice and have a conversation. He spoke to his agent. One, that isn't against the rules of UEFA and FIFA. And secondly, that isn't upsetting the apple cart, as it were. But Arsenal, according to the mainstream media, are still leading the race for Declan Rice. The next 5 to 6 days, there is going to be nothing new in this circumstance. Of course, if big media outlets put out big headlines and the news is trending, we will talk about it as a fan community, as a football community. But unless something drastic changes and the world changes, my view on this, I don't know about yours, is going to be very, very similar. Nothing's happening until after that cup final. So as much as Man United are trying to squeeze in, they've not managed to put themselves ahead. Bayern Munich have not managed to put themselves ahead of Arsenal. So as much as that was genuine news, those things really happened, the circumstance hasn't changed for Arsenal. And that is what I love about the transfer window. That is my focus, really. Okay, great. New news has come in from another source. Does it change the situation? That is what I'm discussing more so than anything else. Arsenal are closing in. Arsenal's official bid is being set. It will come in next week for Declan Rice, and we will see what happens. Listen, people, hit the like and the share button. Make sure you subscribe to the Terrace. Of course, turn on that bell notification button as well. Until next time, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And I'll see you all again soon.